Welcome to part 4 of our series on the parts of speech. And in this session, we're going to be looking at the adjective in American English. As we study adjectives, we'll be looking at definitions and examples, how adjectives are used within a sentence, how adjectives are used to compare things and to even show a relationship, and finally the concept of the participle. Out of the 8 parts of speech, the specific job that an adjective does in a language is to describe or to modify a noun. Adjectives are going to give you more information about the noun, and they often answer questions like which one, what kind, how many, or whose. So an adjective's job is to describe. So we look at this velociraptor, for example, and we wanted to describe this velociraptor. Adjectives that we could be used would say, which velociraptor? This one. How many velociraptors? One. What color velociraptor? A green one. What kind of velociraptor? Fuzzy, stuffed. Who belongs to this velociraptor? This is my velociraptor. It's Mrs. Brown's velociraptor. It's a special velociraptor. It's a furious velociraptor. It's a smiling velociraptor. So an adjective is going to tell you all of these kinds of details about the noun in the language. There's a very specific kind of adjective in American English known as the article. And in English we use 2 articles. We use the and we use a or an depending on the word. A is used in front of a word that starts with a consonant, as in I brought a snack. In this case, the S here is a consonant. And an is used in front of a word that starts with a vowel, as in I ate an apple. And that N there just helps our language kind of flow together and sound a little bit more poetic as we speak. So what's the difference between a definite and an indefinite article? Well, the is known as the definite article. It's used when you're naming a really specific thing. So I was reading the book that Mrs. Brown assigned. So I was reading this one specific book, not just in anything, not just any book at all. A or an would be the indefinite article used to referring to a general category. I was reading a book in class. It could be any book that you've brought in from home or got off the shelf, just anything in particular, as opposed to the one book that you're talking about that might have been a specific assignment or a specific title. Let's look at an example using our ninja friends here. Are we going to say let a fight begin or let the fight begin? If we say let a fight begin, we're kind of giving an indefinite fight. This could be any kind of regular fight they might do, a practice, an ordinary kind of exercise, something at class. But if they're about to have the fight, this is the one big, most important specific fight. This might be a battle for a championship ribbon. It might be a battle to the death. It might be the one thing that's going to make the difference in these ninjas' lives. So there's a big difference between the definite and the indefinite articles. Now, adjectives are not only used to tell us about a specific noun, but also to help us compare nouns with each other. And these are known as the comparative and the superlative form of the adjective. The comparative is the ER form, when we're trying to say that something is bigger, better, faster, richer, taller. And then the superlative is the EST form. When you say something has reached the highest peak, the apex of what it could possibly be, then we use bigger, best, fastest, richest, tallest example. And you can see some of the examples here with cold is an adjective, but then colder tells you that it's even more cold than the first one, and then cold is the most cold that anything could possibly be. Now, some adjectives form the comparative and the superlative in an irregular fashion. They don't add the ER or the EST, although you notice sometimes they do have an R or an ST in there someplace. And sometimes you just have to add the word more or most if you want to say something, like something that's fun. When you're a little kid, you might say that was the funner thing we did, or the funnest thing we've ever done together. But fun is actually considered an irregular comparative. You would add more in front of it instead. You see, that was more fun than the last time, or that was the most fun we ever had in English. Some other common examples would be bad, worse, and worst. You don't say badder. Good, better, and best. You don't say gooder. And little, less, least, for example. Those are some of the irregular comparative forms for adjectives. Now, you also have to be careful because there are some adjectives that cannot change degrees at all. Something cannot be more than something else, and these include words like dead. Either you're dead or you're not. You can't be deader than the next person or the most dead person in the room. Again, includes things like final. Either something is final or it's not. Half is either exactly half or it's not quite exactly half. Pregnant, round, either something's 360 degrees or it's not round. Another classic one is unique. If something is unique, it is singular, it is by itself, it can't be more unique than something else, it can't be most unique ever. Unique implies by itself that it is already at that point of the superlative. And there are other examples in the language, kind of keep your eyes out for those as you're writing. Now, just like nouns can also have a proper form that name a specific person, place, or thing, their adjectives also are considered proper adjectives. These would include things like brand names, if you're talking about the Verizon phone or Kleenex tissue, or adjectives that are made from a place name, like English literature, Victorian style, Chinese food, American flag. These become proper adjectives because even though they're describing, they still list a reference, a specific named place or thing, and they'll need to be capitalized. So just remember that if the word is capitalized when it's used as a noun, it will also be capitalized if it's used as an adjective. So when we talk about I'm studying English, we have a capital E for the name of the language. Then if you're studying English literature, you also would need to capitalize that E. It stays the same. It stays as a proper noun, as a proper adjective, and retains that capital letter. Now, just like gerunds are a form of a verb that are doing the job of a noun, there are some forms of verbs that do the jobs of an adjective, and we call these participles. They usually end in ing, and they're going to describe something rather than show action. And examples would be things like, I'm going to the swimming pool, or I'm going to put on my hiking boots. Hopefully you won't do those two things together, but you get the idea. In this case, swimming is describing what kind of a pool it is. It doesn't mean that the pool itself is doing the action of swimming, but swimming becomes an adjective that tells you what kind of pool. Hiking, even though it ends in an ing and can be an action that people perform, I'm going hiking today. In this case, it's not, the boots themselves are not doing the hiking, but hiking tells you what kind of boots you have. So participles is a form of a verb that's doing the job of the adjective, and remember the job of the adjective is to describe or modify that noun. Participles that get separated in a sentence from their antecedent can create some of the most amusing mistakes that you'll see in English writing. When a participle phrase gets separated from the noun it's describing, we refer to that as being a dangling participle. So look at this, for example. Walking down Fifth Avenue, the Empire State Building is an impressive sight. Well, I'm sure that if the Empire State Building over here suddenly sprouted legs and began to literally walk down the street on Fifth Avenue, that would indeed be an impressive sight to see on your trip to New York. Instead, you want to make sure that the participle is actually connected to the thing that it's describing. You say, I was impressed with the sight of the Empire State Building as I walked down Fifth Avenue, to avoid that idea of walking down Fifth Avenue being a participle phrase describing the building doing the walking. Here's some other examples of a classic dangling participle. Flying south for the winter, I saw a huge flock of geese. Again, it implies that flying south for the winter is intended to describe this geese, because that's what a flock of geese does, but it looks like it's actually describing you, like you were in the process of flying south for the winter when you saw the huge flock of geese. Running to catch the bus, James's wallet fell out of his pocket. What it intends to mean is that James was running to catch the bus, but it looks like the wallet was doing the running to catch the bus. And the same thing on the last example, flying gracefully from flower to flower, the third baseman watched the bee. Now, I've seen some pretty impressive third base playing, but I don't think I've ever seen a third baseman fly gracefully on the field from flower to flower. What you have here is a classic dangling participle where this phrase, flying gracefully, has become separated from its intended descriptor, which should be the bee itself. Ready for a review? Click on this link that'll take you to a YouTube video that's going to show you the Schoolhouse Rock version of adjectives in a song form that will stick in your head and help you remember that adjectives have a job to do in the English language of describing nouns and pronouns.